It's about time that you might want to doze off a little bit. So I hope I'm not too boring for you this afternoon, that the time will just zoom by for you. Of course, I've been asked to talk about the first best steps. But before I move into that, I'd just like to take a few moments maybe to get to know you guys. So please play along if you wouldn't mind. So how many freshmen do we have in the room by show of hands? Hi. Freshmen? Okay. Sophomores? What about juniors? We have some juniors, okay. Any seniors by any chance? 3, all right. Now what about majors? How many of science or engineering majors? Okay. What about English or modern languages? Anybody? No, no one. Okay. Social work. Anybody social work? No. History? Let me guess. Business. Business majors? Yeah.
No.
All right, okay. And just if a couple of you would be willing to share kind of why you're in college and what your plans are for the future. Any volunteers? Anyone? Want to just step out there? I see you raising your hand. Come on. Why don't you share? Just kind of why you're in college and what your plans are for the future. You can do it, really, you can. Are you in college just because somebody made you come, your parents said you have to go? I mean, that can be a reality. It's like, hey, either you go to college or you get out. That can happen, You're laughing, did that happen for you?
No, I can.
Okay, well, very good. So what do you want to do when you finish college? What are your plans?
Well, I'm majoring in accounting, and I want to be a celebrity accountant, but I want an accountant for a big company.
Okay, very good. Anybody else want to share? Front row.
My name is Travis Blank.
Yeah.
I'm here just kind of further my education. Major is finance. Folks work for some big company like Merrill Lynch or Edward Jones as financial advisor.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. What about this side of the room? Anybody up here want to share? Why you're in college? Obviously you want a degree, I know. But, what are your plans for the future? What about you? You knew I'd pick on you, right? All right, no, but you know what? Stay-at-home moms need to know a lot of stuff. Managing a household is serious business, Raising children, serious work. So you need all the education, all the tools possible to help you in that role. So college is still a very appropriate place for you to be, even to be a stay-at-home mom. So that would be a wonderful thing, too, if you could do that for your children. It would be wonderful. Anyone else want to share something about what they want to do in the future? Okay, all right. I understand. But thank you for those of you who did share. Thank you very much. I have to wear these. I'm sorry. Can't see too good without them, even with the really large print. So I venture to say that the things that are in my presentation are things that you've probably heard before. I don't think anything necessarily new in here. And I promise you that I'm not the original author of the things that you'll see in here. It's just kind of an accumulation of lessons learned from some really good teachers and some really bad teachers, because yes, you can even learn things from bad teachers. But maybe, just maybe, today I'll say something in a way that, just sounds different to you, and it kind of hits a spot, or bell goes off and you say, aha, I understand now what so-and-so said or was trying to say to me. So maybe, just maybe. So my talk on the first best steps is kind of focused around some notes that I took from a lecture by a lady by the name of Marian Wright Edelman. Miss Marian Wright Edelman is the president of the Children's Defense Fund. And so she gave a talk about lessons from Noah's Ark. I'll just give you the highlights and then we'll go in detail. So one thing she said was, don't miss the boat. It's really amateurs versus professionals. And she said we need to build our future on higher ground. So don't miss the boat. Education is important. And obviously you know that because you're here. You're in college, you're students, so you know that. But please remember that it's really not about getting the degree. Yes, that's important. But what's really important is the knowledge that you will acquire in the process of getting your degree and how that knowledge is going to benefit you and potentially the people you serve, you work for, those kinds of things. When I was younger, how many of you have heard of Arsenio Hall? Anybody? Oh, I got some hands. Okay. So way back when he really got first started and had his late night talk show, he had a segment in his monologue where he did things that make you go, thank you, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so here's a little something for you to think about on the things that make you go, So you have two students who graduate from medical school. They both go on to be cardiologists. One finishes at the top of his class, and the other finishes last in the class. But you know what? They're both doctors. Think about that for a second. Which one would you want to be your doctor? I think I'd want the one who finished first. Yeah, there are a lot of variables that factor into that. Was he honest? Did he really study and work hard and get all good grades in a good way? But odds are that he's the smarter guy who worked harder and remembers and retains all of what he was taught, and that's going to show you in the way that he cares for you as a patient. Gotta put the glasses back on. So pretty much what I'm saying here is that, I would suggest that you don't cut corners, you don't cheat, you don't cram for exams, you do the right thing. You take your time, you study so you get good grades, and you get a good return on the investment that you're making with your time and with your money or your parents' money or wherever it may be coming from. Always be open to learning. If ever you're in a room where you think you know more than anyone else in the room, you're in the wrong room. That means you need to be open to get up and move on to another room where you're going to be challenged and you're going to learn something new. Know the limits. And what I mean by that is, depending on the environment, there's certain limits that you have to be aware of. So it may be the way you talk in the office, the way you dress. It's things that you need to be aware of and start thinking about now. Because with the prevalence of social media and all that goes on with that, it really is true that employers kind of look at that stuff to the degree and extent that they can. And you have things that are public and posted. Your attire, what you wear here at school is one thing. What you wear when you go into a workplace is something totally different. And so another thing to keep in mind is that the workforce is multi-generational. And so, you have the baby boomers, you have millennials, you have all ages of people. And so what's acceptable and cool in your generation, in your age group, may not really rest well with some older folks. And so if you encounter an older person who's a decision maker on whether or not you're going to get a job, whether or not you're going to get admitted or accepted into graduate school or for an internship, you have to think about that and manage those perceptions so that it works in your best interest and that you don't get turned away or turned down for something that you weren't thinking about and how that could affect, because it's just a generational difference in what you think. And it's also important for you to know your limits. It's okay to not know something or not know how to do something. It's okay. What you need to do, though, when you recognize that, is ask for help. I had a boss once, and she said, it's okay for you to tell me, I don't know. She said, but I want you to immediately follow that up with, but I'll find out. And that's really important. So it's okay not to know. Know your limits and don't try to push the cart and say, oh, I can do that. I can do that. I'm a quick learner. Yeah, you're a quick learner, and that's fine, but still know your limits and know when you need to ask for help. Plan ahead. I think this was my favorite part of Ms. Wright's presentation because she said it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. So you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan. My little add-on to that, though, is there's a book that I read once, and the title begins, If You Don't Know Where You're Going. Anybody want to finish that? You'll probably end up somewhere else. Imagine that. You didn't have a plan, and you're just going along. You take this class, take that class, go for this job or that job. And then you get down the road 10, 15 years, and you think, man, what happened? I was supposed to be this huge success working at Merrill Lynch, or what happened? Well, if you didn't have a plan, you can end up somewhere very different. Very, very different. Keep focus. You know, there are going to be lots of distractions, lots of distractions. And so it's important for you to keep focused. Really, really important. And let's see. I'll go back. I want to say a little bit more about the keep focus. I want to share with you that I was a hospital sales rep for a while in New Orleans. And though I was living in New Orleans, my sales territory was all of a great portion of the state of Mississippi. And so I had to drive to different parts of Mississippi 4 out of 5 days out of the week. So I had 1 day in the office, the other 4 days was on the road. Well, needless to say, all those days weren't nice and sunny like we're having today. It's probably more like what we had over the last couple of weeks when it's dreary and rainy and cloudy and foggy. And so one day I was talking with my husband about it, and I was telling him, I said, you know, it's really hard being on the road because sometimes it was at night. We had programs and things to do at night. Sometimes it was daytime driving, but it was really hard, and especially when it was raining. And so he told me, he said, when you're going through hell, you just keep moving. And I promise you, he said that to me before Rodney actually came out with the song, if any of you listen to country music. And so he said, you know, he said, you just don't stop. You keep moving. You might slow down a little bit, but you keep moving until you get through to the other side of the storm. Because if you stop and you just sit there, guess what? You're going to get soaked. You know, you're going to get soaked. So keep focused. That's good. But also, you know, just recognize that it's going to be a little challenging, but you can get through it. And then on for the brag book. Anything that you were proud of. For me, I kept a book with letters. I even had, and I still have it actually, I started to bring it today. I have my SAT scores. Y'all, I'm going to be 50 years old this year. But I still have the physical copy of my SAT scores because it got me a scholarship for college. Okay? Letters from clients from different businesses that I work for. If a client sent in the letter saying, thank you, Carol, for your help. You were really supportive. You helped me out in this situation. If I got something from my boss that was above and beyond a performance evaluation and saying, thank you, Carol, great job, anything like that, I kept it all. And I suggest that you do the same thing, anything that you're proud of. And when you go on interviews, whether it's for graduate school, whether it's for a job, internship, bring it with you because it may give you an opportunity to demonstrate to that interviewer some things about yourself that's kind of hard to put on paper. So it's like your resume in 3D. You know, it's a hard copy of all of the things that you've done. I don't know if since most of you were business majors, maybe none of you are interested in pharmaceutical sales. Excuse me, but pharmaceutical sales can be very competitive in terms of getting those jobs. And so I was a drug rep once, and I was so glad that I had my brag book because there were people who brought other things. I mean, there was one girl who, you know, if you haven't really had some specific experience, then you've got to sell those managers on why they should give you a job. And so there was one lady, she definitely wasn't a science major, but she wanted to be a drug rep. Well, she had gotten some trophies from running track and swimming and different things, and she actually brought some of that stuff with her to the interview. I was like, that's crazy. But she did, and you know what? She got the job. So, think about carrying that brag book. Always collect those things that you are proud of, even if it's projects that you've done for a class. Keep that stuff and hold on to it, because it's good for you to be able to show that. And sometimes it's good for you to go back and look at it yourself, to remind yourself of the great things that you've done and accomplished, okay? And work your plan, work your plan. So, we talked about if you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up somewhere else. You need to have a plan. So don't just put the plan in the book and write it down and then store it away. You've got to actually work it. You got to look at it on a regular basis and think about it and see where it might need to be changed or tweaked. So I have a little caveat though, because you can have a plan and you make this plan and then a disaster happens. See, I mentioned I'm from New Orleans. Well, Hurricane Katrina happened in my life. Now, I had gone to school, graduate school. I was working at the hospital. I was on from after the pharmaceutical rep, and so I was working at a hospital, and I thought I wanted to be the chief operating officer for this small community hospital. And so they gave me a scholarship to go to graduate school, and I did that, got a degree, master's in healthcare management. And so I'm just working away thinking that's what's going to happen and eventually move up on that. The first disaster that happened, though, before Katrina was that I got laid off from the hospital. I was like, oh, man, that wasn't my plan. That wasn't in the plan for me. I was supposed to be at this hospital and becoming the COO. Then the next thing that happened, excuse me, my mom died, Katrina happened, and so it's like, oh, man, we moved. We moved for a couple different places. We went to Lake Charles, and then Hurricane Rita hit Lake Charles, and we had to evacuate from there. And so I was like, oh, my goodness. And I get to Houston. I eventually landed in Houston, started working there. And my boss came to me, and she said, Carol, there's a position open in Beaumont for Catholic Charities. You might want to consider it. And there's two ways you could take that. You could either think, oh, that's a real pat on the back. She thinks you could be the president CEO of an agency. Or it's telling you, you need to go. So you could either, sit back and think that's a negative thing or think it's a positive thing. Well, I think it's a positive thing. And so I followed her advice and I applied, and here I am 5 years later, still here in Beaumont. And I say all that to say you can have a plan, but if you're working it and you're tweaking it and you're flexible, you got to be a little flexible to realize that sometimes what you want or what you think you want may not be the direction that you need to be headed in. So to be open to other possibilities and not just so rigid and fixed that this is what I have to be. I have to be a financial advisor. Maybe there's something different for you with that. Catholic Charities has a program called Asset Building Case Management. And technically, the director of that program is a financial advisor because she works with families on how to build their credit, how to manage their budgets, how to manage their money, and working towards first-time home ownership. Now, is that going to make you? No. It's not. It's not going to make you the big bucks. But it's very rewarding work. I promise you it is. And so you just don't know. Maybe that might be something that's in your future, a financial advisor in a different capacity than what you had envisioned. So just think about those things. Amateurs versus professionals. So this is another kind of thing that makes you go, You see it. Miss Wright said the Ark was built by amateurs, but the Titanic, which thing, was built by professionals. Oh my goodness, really? They could fail at something? Imagine that. Good habits. One of the things that it's important to think about is a lot of times when people have something, let's say alcoholics, it's I can quit anytime. People smoke. I'll quit tomorrow. The idea that we're going to eat healthy. Oh, I'll start that next year. That'll be my New Year's resolution. I'm going to exercise. Oh, yeah. Next week, I'm going to start that plan. I've got it all worked out. So don't start tomorrow. Start those habits now. And one thing, though, that's really good is that if you fall down on that, you can always get back up and start again. So just make sure you start those good habits. I would suggest that you avoid using the word try and instead replace that word with words like doing and working. So instead of saying that I'm trying to finish this class, no. I'm trying to get an A out of this class, no. I am working on an A. I am going to get an A out of this class. So do what you can to eliminate the word try from your vocabulary. Feel and use your own power. Two things here. Positive mental attitude. There's lots of books out there, good things that you can read about having a positive mental attitude. And I promise you that attitude can take you a very, very long way and help to get you through a lot of tough times that you'll face in work or just in personal situations. One of my favorite cartoons, it's a New Yorker cartoon, and there are these two guys, and they're shackled. You can tell that they're in a jail cell. Beards are really long, hair is really long, they're just skimpy looking. But there's one guy who's saying to the other one, I've got a plan. And so he's this eternal optimist. You know, here they are shackled. It's obvious that they've been there for a very, very long time. But he's still trying to plan the escape. So I just love that because he's just so positive, and hopefully he's going to get out of that jail cell. The other thing, though, is the power of the mind and what can happen. How many of you know or have heard people say if you take a picture of something and you put it up on your refrigerator, put it up on the wall, or if you're working somewhere, people maybe have cubicles to put it up, you know, something positive, that picture of the dream that you want. Before my mom died, she had a dream that she wanted a Lincoln Town Car. And so she always said she wanted a black Lincoln Town Car. But the only picture that she could find was one of a gold one. And so she had that up on her refrigerator. When she was diagnosed with cancer, I was on the phone with her and she said, I was about to change posts with my sister because my sister had been there with her. And she said, you know what we're going to do when we get here, right? And I said, yes, ma'am, I know. We're going to get the car. She said, yes, that's right. So when I got there, we go to get the car. What did she get? A gold Lincoln Town Car. And I don't think it was even on her mind at the time. Honestly, it wasn't on mine either. It wasn't until after she died and I went back to Tennessee to go close out her house and everything, and there was the picture of that gold Lincoln Town Car on the refrigerator. And my husband and I looked at that, like, man, that's just amazing, kind of freaky. He put a different spin on it, though, so then he found a picture of a gold Hummer and went and put it up there. That one didn't happen, no. And so that positive mental attitude and just always putting reminders in front of you that help to reinforce those positive messages can really work amazing things in your life. So please don't ever underestimate the power of positive thinking. The other part about using your own power, you know, sometimes there's this struggle, trusting versus challenging authority, if you will. You know, it's a good thing to trust in the wisdom and experience of people who have been on the job longer, or teachers, or your parents, or employers, all of those things. It's good to trust in that. But sometimes people and organizations suffer from tit-wadding. Anybody ever heard of tit-wadding? Come on. You guys have heard of it before? said?
I said maybe not that term.
Oh, it's an acronym. This is the way we've always done it. That's what it stands for. And I tell you what, you'll run into it. And in some places, it's really a hard thing to break. People are just, this is the way we have to do it. Can't do it any other way. There's no room for thinking or creativity. And so sometimes you have to challenge that in the right way. You know, you have to kind of weigh the options there, but to challenge that and say, you know what, I can think of a better way, a more efficient way, a more productive way of getting that same job done. So maybe you might be David up against Goliath. You could do it. You could do it. And so lastly, Marion said, we should build our futures on higher ground. She said, let's leave our nation and world better than we found it. So she talked about values. Have any of you had the opportunity yet to take the leadership development class with Jeff Dyson? Anyone? Let me just stop for a second and say, strongly recommend, regardless of your major, if you take that class, personal leadership class. Honestly, I just finished that with a special workshop that was through the Great Beaumont Chamber of Commerce, and we had a special leadership module for young professionals. It's a mentor-mentee program, and it's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's a wonderful workshop or seminar, so I encourage you to please look into that. But one of the habits is seek first to understand, then to be understood. So if you work first to try to understand others, the people you're working with, people that you have to get along with, whatever the case may be, if you seek first to understand them, you're going to go so much further than if you're just trying to get your point across. At Christmas time, my daughter and my son were having a discussion about what kinds of things would stop you from getting a job. And my daughter was saying, you know, she felt like if he had dreadlocks or if he had an earring in his ear or different things that, you know, that people wouldn't consider him for a job. And he said, I cannot believe that anybody would just not consider me for a job just because I have dreadlocks. But she was adamant in her point, and he was adamant in his point, and before you know it, they're screaming and hollering at each other. I mean, major argument. And I was talking with my husband about it afterwards. I said, what do you think? He said, they both want to be understood. He said, you know, the problem is that if you're not agreeing, what they were both thinking was, if you're not agreeing with me, then you must not understand. And in order for you to understand, then I have to speak a little bit louder because that's what's going to make you understand is when I speak louder, you're more likely to hear me and understand what I'm saying. And guess what? That's not true. So, you know, she was so busy trying to get her point across. He's so busy trying to get his point across. And all it was a really big argument. And we just had to separate them, pull them in separate corners. Mama's talking to daughter, Daddy's talking to son. And eventually they came back and they apologized and was like, okay, maybe I didn't understand. You know, and we worked it out. But it was an issue of, I want to be understood. You need to understand me. And that's really not going to be the successful thing for you. Some other things to think about in terms of values. Somebody told me once, or I read somewhere, it says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's an important thing to think about, especially like, you know, being a financial advisor. You can know tons of stuff. But your clients are going to want to know how much you care about their situation. And that you want to make the best thing for them, for their life and their financial plan and their retirement. They want to know that you care about the future. It's fine and well that you might know how to invest it and put it in and what the right place is and all those things. don't think you give a squat about them, then they're going to move on to the next person. Treat others with dignity, respect, courtesy, and compassion, the way you would want to be treated. It's not necessary to scream at someone, talk down to them. And people may not always talk to you in that way, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't give them that courtesy and treat them the way you would want to be treated. What would you do if you weren't afraid? That's something to think about in terms of values, because sometimes we're afraid. Oh, I may lose my job. Oh, I may not get the job. I've got to do something that's not the right thing, that goes against what I believe, the fabric of my life. You know, you've got to really think hard, long and hard about that. You can't be afraid of what's going to be that end result to think that, oh, something negative is going to happen and it's going to be the end of my life or the end of my job. It's always good to take the high road and to really make sure that you're doing something because you know it's the right thing to do and not because you're afraid of what the outcomes might be. You know, my mom used to say, and she got it from a song somewhere, you got to stand for something. Anybody finish it? They fall for anything. So think about that in terms of your values. Stewardship. Now this is kind of, at least it's a little bit of a twist, personal, that I believe that each of us has a responsibility to be good stewards. That everything that we have is a gift from God. And that we are supposed to share those gifts with others. And so, your knowledge, your skills, your talents, your money, all of those things, you have to share that with others because it's not meant to be just yours. You're not supposed to just accumulate all of the wealth and knowledge just for yourself. You know, there was a program in New Orleans, and it's probably national, but I don't know for sure. I haven't kept up with it. But it was called Each One Save One. And that it's just so important. If everybody, if every single person kind of took that responsibility for one other life, at least one other one, imagine what we could accomplish. Everybody thought that way. We have to be good stewards of the care that we exercise for our planet, for our communities, for this world in general. You know, we can't just think about, I'm going to go throw that in the trash. There are recycle bins around here, right? I hope you're going to put it in there when you finish. We can't, that's another thing that we can't just say, oh, let the next generation. It can't be a, I'll start tomorrow kind of thing. We really have an urgency to take care of our environment and to be good stewards of that. Because that also, in my personal opinion, is a gift from God. About sharing your gifts with others, I'd like to share this story with you. My best friend, husband and I's best friend, he's a priest. He's the priest who married my husband and I. And he did a talk one time about the parable or the miracle of the feeding the 5,000 with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And at the time he was doing this talk, he's a Franciscan. And so they wear these brown albs. Have you ever seen those? It kind of looks like a monk's robe or something, but it's not. I don't know if that's really a monk's robe. And so he was doing this talk in the church, and he was saying, he said, you know, maybe it really wasn't that Jesus multiplied those fish and loaves to feed 5,000 people. He said, maybe the miracle was that the people shared with each other. And next thing we knew, he started taking out, he had some beef jerky. He took it out and he threw that out into the audience. He had a Hubie pie. That's a local New Orleans thing. He had a pie. He took the pie and he threw that out. He had a little pint of milk and he took that. He said, you know, people were traveling. And so they probably had food and stuff with them. And the miracle was that when they came together and shared, that's how they because people shared with each other. So really, we have a call to stewardship to share with each other. You like that idea? No? It sounds okay to me. You think that could be a reason why they all ate? Yeah. I like that story. I do, because it's just another way of thinking about it. And it was one of those things that made me go, they really did. Because that would be, I'm not saying that Jesus couldn't multiply the fish and the loaves. I'm not trying to say that. But there's really another miracle there that people got out of themselves and became more generous and wanted to share with each other. So just something to think about with that. And let's see, what else do we have here? I told you about Kara sharing this. Okay, your legacy. And this is also something from the 7 habits. One of the habits was begin with the end in mind. Now that's not unique to 7 habits. I've heard that so many times throughout my career. You've got to begin with the end in mind, about what's the end goal that you want to reach. And so think about that with your life in general. One of the exercises in the class, it started out with, what will your obituary say? Write your obituary. Or what would someone say at your funeral if they were speaking? And then he said, well, okay, we won't make it so sad and down and depressing. Let's go to a happier occasion. Let's think about your 80th birthday party. And you have all your friends and family there talking about what you've done over the course of your 80 years. What do you want people to say? Stay-at-home mom. You want to have children. What would you want your grandchildren to say about you? You want them to say some good things. She was strong, she was tough, she was smart, she helped people. I don't know. Will those be some nice things for them to say about you? Would you want them to say that? What would you want your grandchildren to say? What do you think?
I don't care what they say. I just want them to know that I'm not getting along.
But what qualities would you have needed to put your kids through college? Gotta work on that. Think about that. Think about it. Because you want them to care. And you want them to see the value and know the sacrifice that you would have made to put those kids through college. Because it's not going to happen just, blink of an eye. That kind of stuff. You're not going to twinkle your nose and make kids go through college. It's not going to happen. It takes a lot of work. And so your grandchildren need to expect that or understand that and realize that if they want to do that for their children, they're going to have to make the same kind of sacrifices that you make. Fair enough? Thank you. Anybody else? What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want the people to talk about at your 80th birthday party? Come on. If you haven't thought about it, y'all, think about it. Think about it. Yes.
Since no one's answering,
Yes.
I went to a funeral recently where a good friend of mine passed away, and all they kept talking about was how he was constantly serving everyone else. How you could call him at 3 in the morning and he went inside, you asked for help, how we can get you out of the ditch if you were trapped in a ditch. And it really just stuck with me. I'd like for someone to say that I constantly had someone else in mind other than myself. I think it's a very honorable characteristic to have. And if I can constantly serve other people, I believe, I just think it's great honor. And so I love for someone to say that about me. He was constantly looking out for somebody else.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. The NPR, National Public Radio, has a segment that's called This I Believe. And they published the book with people's essays on what they had submitted to the radio station on This I Believe. And one of the essays was, always go to the funeral. And when I read that, I was like, man, they were so right. So the lady was writing and she said, her dad's funeral was like on a Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the afternoon, when a lot of people were at work. And she really didn't think people were going to be able to come out. She said when she turned around and she saw all the people in the church, how it warmed her heart, what it meant to her that those people came out. And that's really something to, I mean, I think it's really something to think about. For me, I think about that because, you know, I know how sad I was when my mom died. And I know how good I felt when I saw people who came out to the funeral. It just helped. It really did. And so, you know what? I think about what I do every day because I want people to be at my funeral to support my kids. You know, there was a man, and I kid y'all not, my mom's been dead for 11 years. She worked with this man for maybe 8 or 9 years. He was her supervisor in Tennessee. Now, I have to tell you that my mom was not an easy person to work with. I just know that because she told me stuff, you know. She told me some of the things. When she moved to Nashville, you know, we had been in New Orleans all our lives, and Nashville has hills, and they get snow. And so when it would get cold, she wouldn't go to work. When it was snowing, she was like, nope, got to stay home. She tried one time to catch the bus, and she's like, nah, doesn't work for me. And so her second year there, the man came and he brought her a copy. He said, Cecilia, here's the inclement weather policy. Like, you know, you can't do that again. You can't just not come. But this man, when my mom died, she died in July, that Christmas, I got a card from him. And it said, your mom was a great lady. I still have that card. It's like, man, that's awesome for somebody to think that about you. And so think about your legacy. You don't have to think about the death part, but recognize that we all get there someday. We do. Sometimes sooner than what we hope or expect. It's not a plan for it. But think about your 80th birthday. Think about that. And what's the legacy that you're going to leave? Or what are the good things that people are going to say about you for what you contributed to the world, to your community, to your friends and